next guest, really glad to have him on. I'll tell you, I was a little conflicted about bringing him on, but you can follow him on Twitter at Kyle Kashuv. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Kyle Kashuv, Kashuv, for those listening on the audio, and it's not up there in the lower third for them. A student from Stoneman Douglas there in Parkland, Florida, and he was there when this... He goes to the school where the shooting occurred, and we know there have been a lot of teenagers out there who are doing a lot of media. One point of view has been expressed. And first off, well, Kyle, thanks for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me, man. Well, I like it.
Well, there you go. I'm glad to see you smiling, too. I know it's got to be rough. First off, how you doing? How are you holding up?
I'm holding up good. I know today I came to school, and there was a lot of support. There were practically, I'd say, like at least 150 police officers just outside the school. Apparently there were 2 horses and a goat and a lot of dogs throughout the day.
Was the goat being ridden by a policeman? Because he lost a bet.
No. They were just standing outside and they wanted people to pet it, and they were just they were crapping all over like the front grass.
Yeah, it seems to me like it. Yeah, if you have a fire safety drill or something that day, and so what's going on here? Well, we had to bring the goat. Why? It's a therapy goat. I don't even know if that's a thing. Therapy goat.
Like it'll make it worse.
Well, good. Well, listen. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers are with everyone who's been affected there. And I mean, I was talking with you about this off air. I was a little conflicted about bringing you on. I said to my booker, I was like, no, don't bring him on, because I hate it when teenagers, we've talked about this so much, or kids are exploited in tragedies. And the only reason I bring you on is because, unfortunately, there have been so many kids on the other side who've gone out and they've gotten CNN town halls and they're on every single show. And it seems like you've been brought into this somewhat reluctantly. I mean, you didn't jump at the chance, and now people are starting to hear from you. So I said, okay, if everyone's going to give the other side a voice, I wanted to give you a voice. What made you decide to, okay, I'm going to dip my toe in the water?
It really started when I went to Tallahassee, and I saw that the movement was sadly becoming a little bit less of making sure school shootings won't happen again, but more about anti-gun agenda pushing.
Right.
And then I realized, like, look, there's only a Democrat point of view in this entire situation, and I'm a Republican, and I think it's important that we express both sides of the situation. So I rolled with that, and everything's been like networking on my own. Like, I have to reach out to Fox like on my own. There's nothing wrong with that. But I haven't been getting like active. Kyle, would you like to be an interview on like mainstream media networks? They haven't personally reached out to me.
Right. Well, and that's why I'm very grateful that you came here and we can spend a little more time with you. You know, we had Stephen Williford on after the Sutherland Springs shooting, the guy who stopped the bad guy with his, AR-15. And he had a few requests, but not many. And after we had him on, it really fizzled out very quickly. And I'm going, hold on a second, this was a more deadly shooting. 27 people were shot. This guy is a hero, and no one was interested in talking with him. That was really startling to me. The fact that no one's reaching out to you, and now you're out there, people know your name. Still, CNN, ABC, they haven't reached out to you to be on?
I mean, I've been on a few. I was on ABC The View. Sadly, I was. Okay.
Sadly.
And I was.
How did Whoopi treat you backstage? Did she say, "You don't know nothing, child"?
And then I was on two CNN lives, and then a bunch of tiny, like interviews here and there. Nothing big league until this past few days.
Well, until this program, of course. Now one step forward with The View, 2 steps back. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because you were talking about this off air, and one thing that really strikes me about you is when you talk about it, you have. I mean, listen, you're a teenager, but you do have a basic understanding, it seems, of firearm terminology. We just did a Change My Mind.
Well, I used to watch your show.
And what keyword they're being used? What happened?
Look, Trump won the election, so there was no need for the information.
Oh, okay. Well, it shows a hell of a time to jump back in, Kyle.
That's true.
I hope you had a hell of a piss break, Arnold. Let me ask you this. You seem to have a basic understanding of firearm terminology, and none of the other, regardless of where you line up, none of the other kids do. Now, that's not just those kids. We just did a Change My Mind segment we released this week on a college campus, and none of these college students knew semi-automatic or automatic. Okay, now have you found that that's the case with a lot of the students you encounter at the school?
A lot of my kids in my grade still think that automatic weapons are still a thing, and they're still legal in America.
And then they get on CNN. What's the conversation like between you and them?
The conversation is, there's 2 instances. It's let's ban all semi-automatic weapons, and I'm like, well, practically every gun is semi-automatic, practically.
Right.
And then the other one is we have to ban all guns. Those are the 2 conversations I mainly have. And both of those instances, I have to explain how, A, it's not logical, and then I try to explain the pros of like guns in America and how it represents a national ideal of self-independence.
Well, when you have, without naming names, you have some students from your school who go out there and they say, we do respect the Second Amendment, but we need some kind of legislation. And then what we saw Monday, this new assault weapons ban, which, by the way, would remove our carry firearms here from Walter. By the way, trigger control, just so people know. It would remove effectively almost all defense firearms if it's a double stack or more. Most, semi-automatics, depends, like the '94 assault weapons ban. Again, what do you think when you see students, fellow classmates, going out saying, no, we respect the Second Amendment, but, and then they get in line behind legislation that, like you said, effectively bans all guns that are practically used for defense?
I think it mostly stems from ignorance. A lot of them just bandwagon off each other, and they don't really think about what they're saying. They don't really look into it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they just want you to either carry a musket, don't carry anything at all.
Right, yeah, exactly. That's easy to follow. We can be on board with teachers having muskets, but on the wall. It has to be the horn musket that goes like this. Not the one with the barrel way up. It seems like that could be a little bit scary. That really is surprising because you think it stems from ignorance, but they get all the airtime, and you have to make personal phone calls. Is that concerning to you?
Well, yeah, it's concerning, but that's the way the world works. I'm not good for views, for mainstream media. I'm not.
Yeah.
And so if like there's a Democrat pushing the agenda of a certain news source, then that's who they're going to pick,
Well, let me ask you this before we'll move on with that and kind of the fallout with the media. Did you know at all, or did you have any relationship with the gunman? And we don't even use it.
No, I didn't know of his existence at all, but I had fellow friends who sat in class with him for 3 years, or were their like higher ranking officer in JRTC. They knew he was out of whack and had mental issues and was kind of like an outcast, but no one ever thought he would do something like this ever. Now looking back in retrospect, it's it makes sense that this kid would do something like it, but back then no one thought he would do something like this ever.
Yeah, it's odd to me considering the 39 instances where there were reports or instances recorded, because obviously those don't all happen in school. But I had a couple of kids in school I remember who I made friends with because I just thought if ever they were to snap, I was like, I'll be the kid who was nice to them. And
I was homeschooled. I was worried about my brother for years.
Yes, he was worried about his brother. That's because you were the one who was goading him. No, but so this person wasn't necessarily didn't act out a lot in school. He was more quiet, I guess, in class and seemed to act out in his home life.
I don't know that. What I do know is that he had multiple instances with fights. That's what I do know.
Okay.
I don't know his how he personally acted because I didn't know him.
Right.
But I do know that he had multiple fights and that he ended up in the office a lot.
Wow. Okay. So you can't really go by that. I mean, every kids have fights, and it doesn't mean every kid who had a fight if they became a school shooter. So and that's one thing too. People you don't want to throw around that generalization. Just like the vast majority of gun owners don't end up committing gross acts of evil. Every kid who gets into a fist fight, listen. I had a couple of myself, a couple of dust ups. See, a couple of little riffraffs going on in high school. Let me ask you this. So you go to this school, and there have been a lot of kids, obviously outspoken, town halls, a lot of them there talking about. But we had a shooting, to give you an idea, I'm from Montreal, at Dawson. And Dawson was actually the college right across the river from me. I went to Champlain College, but almost all of my friends went to Dawson. And I remember a lot of kids talking about it, but I remember one, I won't name this person's name, wasn't even there. I knew this for a fact because this is someone who I knew. When it comes to, and it opened my eyes to, with these shootings a lot, it's just get someone from the school. How many of these kids who are out there talking about it are like yourself, maybe didn't have any direct relation to the gunman or weren't even in that building or part of the building who are going out talking about these experiences?
Like, the thing about me is, and I publicly stated it, I was in a different building. What a lot of people don't understand is that we have a huge campus. We have 3,000 kids. Not everyone was in the freshman building.
Right.
Like somewhat a minority of people were in the freshman building when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I myself wasn't in the building. When some people say, "Oh, Kyle, you're a hero," or I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm simply a kid with opinions, speaking them out."
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to be going to the same school where the shooting occurred. A lot of the people who were personally in the classrooms that were targeted have not been on air, and for very good reasons, because every time they do, it brings up the tragedy and the trauma of what they experienced.
Yeah, it is very difficult. We had Stephen Wilford on the day afterward, and he specifically actually said he wanted to do our show because his daughter was a fan and said, we know that you'll give him a fair shake and it'll actually be cathartic. And it was the first time he talked. Remember, he was sobbing on air. Yeah. And remember, I had that conversation. I said, Kyle, I said, well, we had this guy on here, the shooting, Sutherland Springs shooting, and I said, same concern kind of like with you. I said, I don't want to be Barbara Walters exploitative, and if he cries, I don't want to make him cry, but I don't want to interrupt him, because I know what happens with media. They want that shot of people crying. They want the trauma on air because that's great for ratings, but yeah, it's very different if you were there and witnessed it. It's not easy to talk about, certainly not doing a circuit. It's exhausting.
The most disturbing thing I saw was on Tallahassee. It happened so many times. Every time someone got emotional or cried, you would see media swarming from coming out of nowhere. And they basically suffocated the person, and they just nonstop put their cameras in their face. And while crying, people would get in there for the good clip or the good headshot or the good thumbnail, And it was disgusting because they didn't really care about the actual occurrences and people trying to make a change and understanding the tragedy that occurred. They were like, "Oh, this is good for views. Let's do it really quick." And let's get that good picture.
Well, we'll move on to the gun violence in a bit, and I know you want to find some common ground. But before we do that, has this opened your eyes more so to the ugly underworld of media? Seeing this now, do you think that's a facet that maybe you didn't expect?
I always knew about how bad the media and how corrupt the media was in fake news.
Yeah.
But fake news. But it really made open my eyes to see how truly it showed me real instances of corruption.
Yeah.
In media.
Do you know anyone yourself who was there when the incident occurred?
I knew a few kids, and none of them that in my knowledge went out of their way to speak on air or have interviews.
How are they doing? Have you been in contact with them? Are they doing better? Or?
They're all doing okay. Okay. They're all doing okay. But a friend of mine, her lab partner was one of those who was killed, and now she just has an empty seat every day she goes to a class. Gosh,
that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That is absolutely heartbreaking. And now I feel bad because I asked that question that brought up. I don't want to be that guy who's swarming, but no, it really is heartbreaking when you think about it, and it's heartbreaking whenever it happens. Whether it's in Sutherland Springs, whether it's Virginia Tech, and that's where we have, Virginia Tech. It was all pistols. And Sutherland Springs, the guy was stopped by a good guy with an AR-15. And in this case, the guy happened to use an AR-15. So the dialogue has moved now. I'm sure with Vegas it was bump stocks. The dialogue is AR-15, AR-15, AR-15. What are your thoughts on that? And when you've gone on to do media, do you feel that they've tried to lead you with their questions? Have you kind of had that in the back of your mind, oh, okay, I know where I want to go?
When I've been on air and I was really naive, I would really answer the questions that they really asked, and it would lead me solely into a trap of what they wanted me to say.
Right.
But I've been more conscious of that, and I'm going to answer how I want to, and if I don't answer your question, then you're going to deal with it and do whatever you want to. But that's just how I'm going to ansure. If you want me to put me in a trap,
you as a neural net processor, a learning computer. Whoopi's trying to trap me. Okay.
You're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
But I've realized that I know I somewhat forgot your question now.
But, no, I was saying if it was an AR-15 is a talking point now, just like it used to be bump stock. And I wonder if it's always in the back of your mind, they're trying to guide you to something, usually either the AR-15 or assault weapons. I was wondering if that was something you really, and you answered it, that you really felt them trying to push.
I've stayed clear from discussing gun control, specifically what guns to ban, because it's simply not logical, and there's no point. There's not going to happen. So there's no point of even discussing it because it's not logical and it won't happen.
Right.
So simply talking about it goes nowhere. So people start talking to me especially when I have arguments with my friends. They're like, "We should ban the AR-15." I'm like, "Well, pistols can fire just as fast."
Right.
And then it's quite even easier to reload a pistol, and they're also a bit mobile.
Right.
So I think my friends told me that he used an AR-15. So the range of every time he went through a window was limited because of his scope, because of his barrel.
Right.
Had he used the pistol, he would have had all area into the room.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a lot harder to navigate around the room, and this idea that it's the weapon of choice, that's what, you've heard them say. It's not. It's not. As a matter of fact, most mass shootings occur with pistols, and even if you look at a lot of it's just right now, the AR-15 is the buzzword.
It looks it's an angry rifle. It looks scary.
Right. Yes, it looks like a scary rifle. And listen, it's an effective rifle. I won't be someone who's like, well, it's actually, no, it's not a pea shooter, but there are far more effective rifles. There are far more effective killing machines, to use the term, than the AR-15. They're available to the public, and some are less effective. But like you said, it's illogical. You're not going to remove this from the public, but that doesn't change what they put forward, the legislation on Monday, which really isn't just about AR-15s. It would effectively be most semi-automatic pistols. Let me ask you this, because you've talked since about your sheriff there, so I want to make sure that you're okay talking about it, because and if you don't, you can always just say, hey, pass, if you don't want to answer a question. But I've seen you talk about this sheriff. You know, he went out there, and now some things have come to light, and he was immediately blaming the NRA and saying we need to ban all, semi-automatic weapons. So this was really before you had surfaced at all in the media. So you knew who the sheriff was, and you saw his talking points. What were your thoughts when you saw that unfolding across, on a national platform?
Can I pass?
Okay, you can pass, but you've already expressed some thoughts on the sheriff. But maybe you have to see him every day, so I don't blame you. Just if you see him driving by in his Lamborghini.
In his Lamborghini, I'll tell him that Steven Crowder has a few questions.
Yes, exactly. What's the story behind the Lamborghini? What is that? Do you actually see that often?
I have no clue. I just know that it's a nice car, that they did the decals very well, and I wish I had a Lamborghini.
Yeah, I think we all wish.
If I had police funding, I'd get a Lamborghini as well.
Yeah, exactly. Just you can say you're welcome. Well, I guess on behalf of your parents, because you're too young to pay taxes. But say, Sheriff, my parents say you're welcome for the Lamborghini. Let me ask you this now. So we'll get to this because the conversation has been gun control, and you said that's not practical. I know you would like to probably have more discussions with some of these kids who get more airtime in your school. What do you think should be the national conversation if we're having one about this at all?
What I've been really focusing on is bridging the left and the right, because that's the only way change is going to happen if Republicans and liberals can agree on a talking point, because right now the Republicans are the deciding force, and that the Democrats are putting the pressure, but change will only be made if a middle ground is found, and I think that a middle ground has been found. I think that on the basic level, what has been achieved is that what will be achieved is, in order you have to be mentally stable to acquire a weapon, and universal background checks.
Well, I think making sure that the system that we actually have is being implemented, right? Because this guy should have been put on to the next background check. So that's a kind of a talking point. Well, we do have background checks. In this case, this guy who had, I think, blown away this student who had blown away a chicken, I think, with a handgun. I mean, some really, really gruesome stuff. Should not have been able to legally purchase a firearm.
Wasn't he autistic as well? I believe he's autistic.
And that brings me to the topic. You say mental health, mentally stable, right? That is, and I don't expect you to have all the answers, but a lot of people, I'm sure, as you know, in high school, just say, I'm on the spectrum. So it's like, okay, does that?
That's true. That's true. And I was talking to members of the Senate when I was in Tallahassee. And I said to every single one, look, I want to make sure that the Second Amendment isn't infringed upon. What can you guarantee? My biggest concern is that the rights of the everyday American citizen will be infringed upon, and I want to make sure that the mental health checks don't infringe upon that.
Yeah. Did they have an answer?
And I was told you should be a lawyer, and I said I would like to make real money.
You can always start a podcast. Well, what do you want to do? Do you know what you want to do as you get older? What are you going to be studying in college?
I'm going to go into business, and then so my goal is UF, or then graduate degree for UPenn or Harvard.
Okay,
that's the goal.
There you go. Oh, that's funny. My safety was Harvard. Yeah, I mean, look, and then you can get that Lamborghini and drive past the sheriff's house and say, yeah, no big deal. I bought it privately. Yeah, I think the mental health thing it's something that we say a lot, but listen, I mean, there are a lot of teens with anxiety issues, right? If a teen has anxiety and they've been given, Xanax or something, does that mean they do they forfeit their ability to purchase a firearm? If a kid has ever been on Ritalin, I think this is something where, and you know this, right, because you're more of a sort of libertarian conservative, I don't want the government to have the right to strip anyone, as you said, to infringe upon a right now any more than the next government. I don't want Donald Trump to do it. I don't want President Barack Obama to do it. I think the measurement has to be violent behavior or serious provable capability of violence, a judge to rule you mentally defective, not a kid with, who's, everyone says on the spectrum right now in school.
No, but what if, you have some mental issues that can cause you to act irrationally at some point,
Right.
That's always a concern.
Yes.
So, the biggest issue was, how do you determine the characteristics that make sure that you can't have a gun? That's, the hardest discussion right now, I think.
it's the hardest discussion, but you made a good point. It's not a hard discussion about a guy who's acted out violently, who's had 39, reported instances, right, and has a history of it. So we don't need to go to anyone who's on any kind of medication or anyone who went to go see a psychologist or anyone who's been depressed. We can go, okay, how about let's all agree on people who have acted irrationally and violently. People have a history of that, no firearm. We can all agree on that. Like you said, there's some common ground there.
That we can all agree upon.
Yeah.
But then it comes into play whether or not they're inherently, like by their genetics, or like how, like what disabilities they have, if they should be able to own a gun.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's the tough thing is it's until we're minority report and we can predict what crimes people will commit in the future. It's tough. Like you said, you can't infringe upon the rights of someone if they have not infringed upon someone else's rights. This kid already had multiple times.
Yeah.
The non-aggression principle. This kid had already committed acts of aggression against other people. So, but again, like you said, if we bring that up and we talk about it, like you've talked about these guiding questions in the news, that's not what they want. What's been proposed on Monday is effectively a ban on pretty much any semi-automatic pistol. So it's tough to find.
I don't think that's going to pass.
No, of course it won't. No, of course it won't. But that's what they want. Okay, well, listen, we do have to get going. I appreciate you taking the time, and we will ship you a mug and a shirt.
All right.
A lock of Nake Jared's hair. Do you have anything that you really wanted to hit, or any closing statements here? Because I know that the rest of the news, they cut you. Anything you want to say, brother, feel free. You can yell whatever you want.
No, that's it. Thank you. Dance off. Can you dance us off?
All right, we will dance off, and then we'll close.
Thank you.
After this.